So I was talking to someone recently, and we were talking about board games and how these people wanted to like hang out with me and play some board games, as you do. And someone was like, "Yo, I would love to play some board games. I love Catan. Catan is the only offbeat board game that I've ever played." And that comment really kind of grabbed my attention because I just thought, for a lot of people, Catan is still this very offbeat game, but I definitely see Catan rising to this thing of like pretty much everyone. I feel like Catan's almost a household name at this point, like a Monopoly or something. It might not be quite at that level, but it's interesting how a lot of people still consider it very offbeat, and I completely understand that as some people who aren't tabletop players or don't play games really. I bring that up because today I'm going to be talking about Ticket to Ride. And I feel that Ticket to Ride and Catan kind of fill the same niche. That's not the word I'm looking for. AP Environmental Science coming in really strong here. But, they have the same part in this whole, game thing. I feel like you have the bottom, you have, the games that people know that, non-gamers play. So, Monopoly and Sorry and stuff. And then you have all the tabletop stuff that is amazing and, gamers play. And Ticket to Ride and Catan are definitely in that group, but they're kind of in the middle ground almost of that whole thing, and they kind of fill the same spot. And I've really been wanting to talk about Ticket to Ride for a long time, and I've just never gotten to it because I didn't know how to do it. But today I'm going to be talking about it. I'm going to be talking about all of it, because originally I was just going to talk about the mechanics of the game and why it's amazing, but now I'm just like, there's so much inside this little box. It's such an important game, and I'm going to be discussing that today. So, let's get into it, boys. Alright, boys. Ticket to Ride came out in 2004 and won the Spiel des Jahres that year. For anyone who doesn't know what the Spiel des Jahres is, it's basically the game of the year for tabletop games. Over here in the States, it's not as big of a deal, but in Germany, it's very prestigious and it's a huge deal. Other games nominated in 2004 were Dawn Under, Ingenious, Mirahaja, and St. Petersburg. And to be completely honest, I haven't heard of most of those. I've definitely heard of St. Petersburg, and I've probably heard of Mirahaja. It's also worth noting that this was Alan R. Moon's, or the designer of Ticket to Ride's, second Spiel des Jahres win. He had previously won in 1998 with his game Elfenland. Speaking of Alan, that dude is an absolute beast. His first game was a game called Black Spy, which was published by Avalon Hill, who at the time he wrote for. He was a journalist. But after making that game, he discovered his love for game design. So he decided to try that out, and he had a very unsuccessful few years. And due to that, he became frustrated and established a company called White Wind. That ended up failing pretty badly too, but in 1997, the best game company known in Germany, Ravensburger, approached Alan about one of his White Wind games, which was called Elfin Roads, and we now know that as Elfin Lands. And that game won the Spiel des Jahres in 1998. In 2001, he had 3 games nominated for the Spiel des Jahres: Das Amulet, Capital, and San Marco. Carcassonne ended up winning in 2001, so you can't be too upset that you lost. I couldn't find the nomination list for 2001, but if you took the 2004 nomination list, which was only 5 or 6 games, and you see that 3 of your games are nominated, if we're saying that it's around the same amount, you are pretty much half the nomination pool, which is super impressive. And then in 2004, obviously Ticket to Ride drops, and he is making that cash. But seriously, this dude is a beast, and he really inspires me because I totally spark notes his entire career and life. I'll put in the description his Board Game Geek page, but it's super cliche, but he got knocked down so many times and always got back up. I really aspire to be a game designer as good as him one day, and I'll get into how good Ticket to Ride is because it's an incredible game. For now, that is Alan R. Moon. Yeah, how my enemy a friend of me? Why y'all feed off of my energy? Now onto the actual rules of Ticket to Ride. Now I'm not going to go super in depth here because honestly that's not the main point of this video. I will go over the basic rules, but honestly there are really only basic rules. But if you really want a super overhauled version with like examples and all this stuff, you can go watch another video. I'm sure there's like 50 how to play videos of this game on YouTube. So here we go. The objective of Ticket to Ride is to get the most points. You can do this by claiming routes and completing destination tickets. On your turn, you can do one of three things. You can either take train cards, claim a route, or take more destination tickets. I'm going to explain destination tickets first because they basically develop your entire strategy for the game. At the start of the game, you are dealt 3 destination tickets and you have to keep at least 2. Destination tickets name 2 cities on the board and have a point value on them. For example, LA to New York is 21 points. If you connect the 2 cities, at the end of the game, you get the point value on the card. So if you connect LA to New York, you get 21 points. But if you don't connect them, you get that many points subtracted from your score. As a turn, you can take 3 more destination tickets from the destination ticket pile, and you have to keep at least 1 of those tickets.
Growing up, my teachers told me, you better get them grades up if you want to finish high school.
If you choose to claim a route as your turn, you must discard the appropriate amount and color of cards of the route you are trying to claim. For example, if you're trying to take San Francisco to Salt Lake City, you either have to discard 5 orange cards or 5 white cards. After that, you put trains down on these spaces. The longer routes are worth more points, obviously. Gray routes can be taken by any color, but the cards that are played must all be the same color. So for example, if you're trying to take a 3 gray route, you can play 3 blues to take that route. Double routes can both be claimed if it's a 4 or 5 player game, but no player can claim both of the same route. In a 3 or less player game, you can only take one of the 2 double routes. So for example, if we go back to San Francisco and Salt Lake City, if there's 3 or less players in the game, once the orange route is taken, no one can take the white route. Whereas in a 4 and 5 player game, if someone takes the orange route, another player can later take the white route. Routes do not have to be built next to each other. You can always build wherever you want on the board. Train cards are your resources for building routes. If you choose to take train cards, you can take them from the face-up cards or the face-down cards. You can take 2 train cards as your action this turn. The only exception to this rule is if you're taking a locomotive card, which you can only take 1 of as long as it's face-up. If you draw a face-down locomotive card, you're still allowed to take another card. Even though the rules of Ticket to Ride are pretty simple, there's a lot to take into consideration when playing the game. When I first started analyzing Ticket to Ride, I observed the distribution of each color on the board and how many cards were in the deck of each color. However, once I took to the internet, I realized there was much more that I wasn't taking into consideration.
I secure the bag, then I go get it.
One big concept that I never actually took into consideration is what city has the most value, which is what I've actually been able to find the most data on. According to both of my sources, LA is the most valuable city in the game. This is due to the fact that LA has 5 destination tickets going into it, which is more than any other city in the game, as well as a lot of high scoring routes going out of it. New York and Miami are both close seconds. New York has 4 destination tickets going into it, and I believe Miami only has 3, but Miami has a lot of high scoring routes going out of it and has limited access, which makes it a more valuable city.
College was a plan of mine until I seen them fees. Everything I ever needed, I done learned out on the streets.
Have you ever noticed how there are way more route points on the West Coast compared to the East Coast? Well, if you cut the board into 6 different regions, the regions with the most connecting destination tickets are the Northeast and Southeast. Out of the 30 destination tickets, 11 take place between the 2. Even though there are way more route points on the West Coast, it would appear that more destination points take place on the East Coast. Half of the destination tickets also have a destination in the Northeast as well, further implying that even though the route points are in the West, the destination points are in the East.
Welcome to my paradise. We could have a paradise. You getting hungry, we could share a slice.
Each color is actually distributed pretty evenly. Every color has one length 6th route, but at length 5, green and white have 2 routes while every other color has only 1. However, green and white have 1 less with 4 routes. This is a small difference, but strategically, I think this is actually a pretty big difference. Green and white are going to be stocked up more due to the nature of their color, because their colors have slightly longer routes. In a 5-player game, I'd imagine they would be more difficult to obtain. Although that's just speculation, and I don't have any math to actually prove that, but that's just a thought.
Something sinister to it. The pendulum swinging slow, a degenerate moving.
Another interesting thought that I have is the fact that you are taking the other player's resources. When you take train cards, you are taking the resources of the other players to take routes. This shared resource system is actually extremely deep in ways that I don't even want to begin to wrap my head around. You can take cards knowing other players are taking them, take cards based off what is not being taken knowing that they will be more valuable later, and take cards just to keep the resources flowing. These are all just basic strategy thoughts, but I think they are interesting to think about. Also, blocking is definitely encouraged in this game and is a total way to ruin a friendship, but it does promote strategy for more experienced players.
I've been sitting on the charts like a beach chair. My last album spent 52 weeks there.
So since I haven't actually talked to you guys face to face for this entire video, for my conclusion, I thought I would actually, show my face. Basically, the point of that entire last segment was to show how, even though Ticket to Ride is a pretty basic game, there are some deep strategies that players who are more experienced with games are able to use to their advantage, which really spreads the net of the game's audience really wide. I'm gonna use kind of a weird analogy here, but give it a second. I would consider Ticket to Ride like the weed of board games. Now, weed is like a gateway drug, right? So it's kind of like how Ticket to Ride's a gateway game, and how, you know, players who would normally play games might play Ticket to Ride because it's pretty basic and simple. But even, you know, hard drug users still use weed, and it's kind of the same thing as Ticket to Ride. People who are really hardcore into the tabletop genre still play Ticket to Ride, or I would assume so, because, you know, there's so much going on in it that it can be enjoyed by basically anyone, which is super impressive as a design. You could definitely make a similar argument for Catan, but with Catan you have the dice, and the dice definitely might frustrate a player who is really trying to strategize hard. I really like Catan. I think Catan's a ton of fun, because I don't super play it for the hardcore strategizing of it, but for this game, for the universal appeal of everyone, I think it's a lot stronger because you're able to strategize a lot better without a variable literally every turn. Now, Ticket to Ride definitely doesn't come without its luck. It has a lot of luck in it, and it's definitely possible for a player who is way less experienced to win and just get a really lucky game. And although that might be seen as a flaw, I actually see that as a huge positive of the game. And I think that's a positive because as a player, I always thought it was more impressive to be consistent at the game. If you are consistently scoring, for me, I like 120 to that 130 range, or even 115, maybe 110. You know, if you're in that range, that's a pretty consistent good score, for America at least. And I always felt like that was more impressive than just getting a single big win. But the single big win being possible for a player who just gets really lucky and might be a less experienced player is really good, because it allows players who aren't as hardcore about it to have a fighting chance. And it really helps spread that net really wide to everyone out there. Some people might hate it, but I think it's actually really beneficial to the game's design. And honestly, the design of this game is just so tight. Like, it's so good. It is the game that basically got me into game mechanics as a whole, just because when I looked at it, I was like, wow, this is good. Like, whoever thought of this is a genius, because there's so much going on, yet so little. And I just really respect it as a design. I only put a few things in here, and I really dumbed it down from what I was reading, but if you really want to look into it, I would totally recommend reading the stuff I put in the description. But just, research it for yourself and try to figure out how things work and try to strategize in this game, because I think it's so interesting, and I think strategy in general is just like a super interesting concept. So, not strategy, but just like mechanisms in games and all that stuff is super interesting. So if you haven't played this game yet, I would definitely recommend you go out and play it, because it's like one of those like movies, you know. It's like you should watch it just to see how a movie should be made. You should play this game just to see how a game should be made. It's that good, and it's that important, and it's that important to like the whole gaming genre, you know. You can get I've gotten my grandma to play this game. She had a blast. She was blocking people all over. My dad plays this game and he's sick. Me and my dad are competing right now in a huge championship within our family. I've gotten friends to play this game who you wouldn't normally get to play, and it's just great. It's really, really great. I don't really know how to end this video because I could really keep talking about this, and I feel like I haven't talked about it enough. I feel like there's so much more that I should be talking about, but I haven't. I could literally talk about every map, every extra mechanic, how the extra maps introduce mechanics or enhance other mechanics that you don't even realize, because the game is so good at doing things that you don't even realize that it's doing, that it's just like genius. Like literally, Alan R. Moon is a genius, and some of the other people who designed some of the other maps are geniuses. Like this game is crazy. It's crazy. And that's why this game is so important. This game is so important because its mechanics are so good that it makes you do things you don't even realize you're doing. It makes you think for a game that you really shouldn't have to think that hard in. I remember the first time I played this, the first time I played Ticket, I really didn't want to play Ticket for a long time. I was always like really stuck up, and I was like, oh, I want a real game with strategy and all this stuff. My dad was like, bro, the mechanics are really good, you're gonna love it, simple but like complex. I played it and I'm just like, I was just like, dude, I'm thinking about so much right now, and it's like a puzzle. You really gotta bring it together, and then once you just realize like how this game is working, you're just like, wow, this game is so good, and it's so important, because my mom can play this game, and my mom isn't a huge gamer. My grandma can play this game, she's not a huge gamer. I can play this game with a group of gamers, and they can relentlessly block each other. They can really, really strategize, min-max, all this stuff. My sister's boyfriend, huge min-maxer. We played Europe last night. Ooh, a mess. The first time a min-maxer plays Europe, it hits hard, because those tunnels are rough. Now, obviously, I'm talking about the America map here, but you know what I'm saying. Anyone can play this game and just have such a great, enjoyable experience. And that is why it is one of the most important games made. Because it is a gateway game, and it is a gateway drug. And my monitor's just turned off, so there goes my lighting. Oh my god! We finally did it. This video has taken me like 2 or 3 weeks to make, and I've never put this much effort into a video. So please, if you like it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, share. I usually don't beg for likes, but this time I'm selling out. Please, dear God, that would be really great. This is the type of video I would like to make more about, like mechanics and game stuff, because I just think it's so interesting, and it's not just a tabletop thing. Video games I'm really into too. So there's a few games I'd love to talk about, specifically Monkey Ball 2, Metroid Prime 2, Donkey Kong Country, and Country Returns, and just why those games are like masterpieces. That is something I would like to do. So if you want to see more of that, let me know. That's all for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, if you made it this far. And comment down below what your favorite pastime activity is. Personally, mine is drinking water. You know how it is. Stay hydrated. See you later, boys.